It's Monday, time for the Live at 5 Drive. Tune in and turn on to the Good Health Lawyer Radio Hour. I'm your host, Patty Finn. The call-in number is 845-429-1700. Join me here live every Monday, WRCR Radio, 1700 AM. Rocking your health and rocking the law. Let's get started with the show.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Patty Finn, and you're listening to the Good Health Lawyer Radio Hour. We're coming to you at the Live at 5 Drive, WRCR Radio, 1700 AM, New York Talk Radio. So if you want, you can certainly call in and talk nerdy to us. We like that. We have another really special show. But before we get to that, I should give you the number. It's 845-429-1700. We are screening the calls just because we want everybody to be nice and polite to each other. That is the way we roll at the Finn firm, and my firm, Trish Finn Attorney, is sponsoring this show. So anyway, without further delay, let's get down to business and talk about good health and your rights. I am a civil rights attorney. I handle vaccine injury and exemption cases. I've been working in New York State for about 20 years and have amassed a rather large following of parents, mostly, concerned about their children's health and the vaccination program here in New York State. And if any of you are listening to the prelude to the show, you can understand that there's been a lot of activity in New York. New York has always been a hotbed of litigation when it comes to vaccines. And I would attribute that primarily to the aggressive posture that the state has taken on vaccines for children. And some of the lawyers here, including my firm, we've been working very, very hard to ensure that everybody is safe and protected. And, you know, that if you, particularly if you can't receive a vaccine, that you are not forced to do that. Now, I understand there's a lot of people out there that, you know, may not agree with what we're talking about or the things that we're saying. And I respect that. And I would ask that you do the same. The purpose of this show is, you know, educational and information only. We're not giving any medical advice or any legal advice. If you want legal advice, you could certainly contact me. I am located here in Rockland County, and I work in New York City, Hudson Valley area, and actually all throughout New York. I've even handled cases in many, many other states. So without further ado, I'd like to, we already got some phone callers ready to check in, people wanting to talk nerdy, I guess. But allow me to introduce my dear friend and co-host, and what did you call yourself? Sidekick, Bernadette Pager. Bernadette is a writer and advocate for informed consent and medical freedom. She is a proponent of the terrain theory of health and wellness. I'd actually like you to explain that later in the show for everybody else. She is also the Public Policy Director for Informed Choice Washington, and does her own radio show on Fridays out on the West Coast. And, you know, we're the East Coast, West Coast duo. And I really enjoy having Bernadette on the show because, as I've always said, she's a really smart. And that's what we need, smart people. And speaking of smart people, We have Dr. Michael Gaeta. He is an educator, clinician, writer, and publisher in the field of natural healthcare. And Mike's been, Dr. Gaeta has been on the show twice already. And unfortunately, those times I wasn't available. And he was very competently interviewed by Bernadette. But this is really a treat for me that you're on tonight. So I'd like to welcome Bernadette, and Michael, I'd like to welcome you aboard the Good Health Lawyer radio ship. How are you doing tonight?
Very well, Patricia. So glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. We have a caller, and let me take his call and see what he has to say before
Sure.
we jump in. Thomas, are you there?
Hello there, Patty.
Yes. Hi. How are you?
I'm pretty good, actually. I'm over in Hawaii, and it's a sunny day, and there's not much surf today, but otherwise I'm well.
Oh, how nice.
So anyway, I can't hear you.
We're here.
So anyway, the reason I called is last Tuesday, 6 days ago, I went through a natural food store that I've shopped at for over 40 years, and I was assaulted and battered by the owner and two police officers for just trying to shop to get food to survive because I didn't have a mask on. I had already been told by that same store and the police that I could shop there without a mask, but this time, for some reason, they changed their mind. They hit me. They drugged me out of the store and both verbally assaulted, and then I was battered. So I'm looking for legal help.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear that. That's awful. And, I was looking at the regulations in New York, and you don't have to wear a mask if it is medically unsuitable for you, if you have a contraindication. But I will throw this in. I had a little kerfuffle myself yesterday regarding the mask. And I went into a store. I did not have my mask on only because I had forgotten to wear it. But before I had the chance to turn around and go out and get it, I was threatened, to be arrested and stealing. And, it was a really bad scene, and it upset me greatly. I mean, I was really rattled from it. And, I went on with my day, but I did not have the extreme behavior. I did not experience that you're talking about. If you want, you can certainly email me at patriciafinattorney@gmail.com, and we can talk about it. There is possibly a cause of action, but I can tell you the cost of bringing a case like that and actually recovering are so slim that it's not even worth it. And I think the government is counting on that. I know there's a lot of lawyers like myself, and we're perplexed, like, how do you get around these laws? Or not illegally, of course, legally, how do you address them? One problem, I can just tell you, here in New York, we are about to commence a lawsuit on the mask issue. And the argument is that COVID is not a deadly epidemic. And Bernadette and I talked about this on Friday night. We're going to continue that today, and hopefully Dr. Gaeta can share his views there. But, if you have a disease like COVID that is 99.8% survivable, it has prophylactic treatment. So if you are at risk, there's ivermectin, there's hydroxychloroquine, vitamin C, zinc. I know Bernadette can talk a little bit more about those treatments, but or prophylactic methods. I want to be careful about the words I choose. But we were thinking, okay, well, do you really need a mask? Is this really a deadly epidemic? And I can tell you legally that it does not rise to the threshold of a deadly epidemic, requiring emergency type of actions such as wearing masks. But I know also of some groups in Hawaii that might be able to help you. So if you want, again, you can email me at patriciafinnattorney@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to direct you to somebody in your state that can help you. I mean, if I can, I will. But we need a little bit more detail on what happened. And I will tell you this, I'm very sorry. I hope you're okay. And I hope everybody's okay. I know a lot of people out there are afraid. A lot of people really truly believe their loved ones have died from COVID or COVID related illnesses, but things aren't exactly as they seem. I mean, do masks really control the spread of disease? And I can tell you that myself and my guests, we're going to address that in a wee bit, but they don't. And that's not Patty Finn speaking. That is the research. And Bernadette, actually, I'd like to turn this over to you, and then Mike, on the mask issue. Why is it that wearing a filthy napkin on your mouth all day long that stinks is not effective in controlling the spread of COVID?
Yeah, well, Patty, thank you for all that, and the caller for, I'm sorry about his experience. It's happening more and more. And I think after a year of this going on, there are some people in society that have been sort of like pushed to the edge. I don't think they think about it consciously, but subconsciously, they so want it to be over, and they so believe all the hype and the fear. They see somebody with a bare face and they blame that person for this still going on. So I don't blame so much the person or the people. I mean, you should never be rude to anybody under circumstance. I mean, all of that was wrong, but the motivation is coming from the media and public health hype that is pushing the fear and pushing people over the edge. And it's very sad. And you were right that the science clearly shows that the masks are ineffective. And many talking heads have said, even Tony Fauci, that they're symbolic. They're really just symbolic. If you went out in public today and you went and walked around a grocery store and everybody looked normal and nobody had a mask on, you wouldn't know that there's a problem. And the thing is, there's not a problem because brilliant doctors and researchers have learned how to prevent and treat this disease. And we know that there are susceptible groups, and those people need to take extra precautions. But you can't keep this going on and on and on forever unless you keep fear in everybody's face. And that's the symbol of the mask. But yeah, the science is there. I just put up a new post a couple days ago on informedchoicewa.org that has the latest science on masks all in one place. And I encourage people to go read that, because it's not just that they don't work. When a person with no symptoms wears it and goes out or wears it for 8 hours at work, there's just so many things I won't take the time to go into, about how these things become contaminated and they restrict so much, but they're actually doing harm to the person wearing them for the long term. There's a 2012 study on women who veiled, have to wear a veil when they go out in public. And it showed that habitual veil wearers, and that's not nearly as restrictive as a mask that's trying to seal your nose and mouth, but it's still complete covering. They found that they have a 30% reduced respiratory capacity, 30%. And they're at higher risk of upper respiratory infections and other infections. That study is on our website. You can go look it up there. Use a search function to look for masks, and you'll find the most recent information. So Yeah, it's the fear. Fear is driving everything. And, that's why I'm so grateful for you and this show and everybody who's brave and speaking out. We've got to find a way to shine a spotlight on the propaganda so people begin to see it, and then they be able to think more critically on their own.
And thank you. You always speak so eloquently to the mask issue. I'm an attorney, and yes, I understand the science, but my job is to take the science and make it understandable to the court. So I've always found your comments, Bernadette, so useful. And is Tom still on the line? Tom,
Yes,
okay. I want to introduce you to Dr. Michael Gaeta. I don't know if you heard the intro, but he is the principal at the Gaeta Institute for Holistic Health and Education. And Dr. Gaeta, let's jump right in. I mean, I do want to get to informed consent later in the show,
Sure.
but let's help out Tom. What are your comments?
Yeah, thanks, Patty. I appreciate it. And great to, I grew up in New York City, so it's great to be in my first 40 years. So it's good to be connected there. Yeah, I'm so sorry for what happened to you there. And it's in every state, to my knowledge, and you can, as the attorney, you can speak to this, Patty, but these are not laws. This is not a bill that was introduced before the legislature, passed the legislature, signed into law by the governor. These are more, they're called mandates, but these are, and the Colorado governor here also not great on this issue, kind of a tyrant when it comes to masks, was challenged on this on a radio show not too long ago. And he said, yeah, we can't enforce this legally because it's not a law. It's more of an encouragement. We know there's no potential to enforce it because, again, what are police officers? Law enforcement, right? Well, if it's not a law, then what are they enforcing? So these are, so very likely what happened to you, and we're very clear that there was no scientific reason for the assault on you. Obviously, the science on masks is pretty clear. We have about 50 years of research that we can quote that I've been reading for the past 9 months. And from a legal perspective, I think, you were definitely, illegally treated because there was no law to enforce. Certainly a business can set their policy for their business, but typically there is an exception for folks with various medical conditions, and they can't really question you on what that medical condition is. So if you can state that there's a medical condition that prohibits you from wearing a mask because it might do you harm, they can't really press you on that because it's your personal health information. Then you're well within the legal grounds of not wearing a mask in most places. I know Hawaii is particularly draconian, kind of California style, with a lot of health freedom issues. But as Bernadette said, hope you're haven't been injured, and you can always take it to the press, so to speak, and use the court of public opinion to bring your case and to state to the media, however you do that, what happened to you, why it's wrong, why the masks are unsupported, why law enforcement doesn't apply because it's not a law. You have all those options available to you.
Dr. Gaeta, that was actually a very, very good analysis of the enforceability and of this mandate that you have to wear a mask. But Tom, let me just tell you, I did say these cases are difficult, and they are, but they're not impossible. So, if you really are committed and in a position to do it, you should do something. I'm only talking about the practicality of it. People call me all day long and tell me, my rights are being violated, and like you and everybody else, get in line. And these cases are very difficult. The government and the people involved are, okay, we had another caller, the government and the people involved in passing these rules and regulations, you practically can't touch them. So anyway, I did want to read something from New York State's executive order with respect to face coverings, and you can find this in section 66-3.2. And basically it says any person who is over age 2 and able to medically tolerate a face covering shall be required to cover their nose and mouth with a mask when in public and unable to maintain or when not maintaining social distance. So that's the problem there. That is the number one problem. If, for example, if I was to sue to invalidate this, I think a judge would look at me and say, well, you don't have to wear it if you don't want to. But in your case, Tom, you were assaulted and harassed, and, it went a little further. So, be sure to email me, patriciafinnattorney@gmail.com, and I'll be able to, give you more advice and hook you up with my good friends in Hawaii. By the way, how did you hear about our little show in New York, our big show in New York?
Well, I heard about your show on Facebook. It just popped up in my in my feed, so I heard about it there. And I'll just add a few more things. I know you probably need to move on, but in this incident, the police officer, the first police officer who struck me.
Oh my gosh.
As soon as he struck me, all we was having a conversation, was got a bit heated, and then he struck me. He literally struck me in the chest. And then a minute later, he said, I got all this on video camera. And I said, that's excellent. Then we'll see on that video that you just struck me for no reason. That's battery.
Yeah, you may have a cause of action there, and I can certainly, help you with that. And I'm terribly sorry. I know I had a very similar problem yesterday myself, and nothing happened to me physically. There was no police involved, and I was really upset. I remember I called one of my sons, and I told him about what had happened, and he told me, shake it off and you'll be okay. But your case sounds a little more serious. So, let us know. And everybody out there in Facebook world, Twitter, wherever you are, please share our videos. All right, we're going to go to the next caller, if you don't mind, Sally. Let's see what Sally has to say. Sally, hi, this is Patty Finn. You're on the Good Health Lawyer Radio Hour, and thanks for calling in. I have my guest, Dr. Gaeta, and my good friend, Bernadette Pager, and we're ready to serve. What's your question? Did we lose Sally? All right, hold on.
Sally, you're on the air.
Okay, hi, Patricia, This is Sally. We worked about 10 years ago together on a vaccine employer problem, and I'm retired now, so I'm not concerned about my employer requiring me to get the vaccine, but the airlines are all talking about requiring vaccines to fly, and my life is very much centered around travel. My daughter has professional things that she does, and she's a minor, and I have to travel with her, and I don't want to be forced to get the vaccine just because I get on the airplane. I'm not really concerned about this. There's plenty of prevention and treatment available. I'm not really worried about serious illness for myself.
Sally, I definitely remember you, and I remember your voice, and I remember everything that we did. And as I recall, we were successful. Were you pregnant with this child, the minor? Wasn't that it? Were you pregnant then with this baby? Oh, I think we might have
I'm
lost.
sorry. It's very, very
How old is your minor child?
How old is my daughter?
Yeah, I was just curious.
She's 13. So
Yeah.
she's not required to get the vaccine. Apparently, there's no requirements for minors to get the vaccine. But the airlines are all saying that they want to start requiring the vaccine just to get on an airplane.
Well, I would actually like to talk to you more about this privately, actually. If you could email me, patriciafinattorney@gmail.com, because that is something I'm pretty sure we are able to address, the airline passport. But Mike, let me turn this over to you. What is your view on traveling and a vaccine passport?
Well, yeah, this is the airline initiatives will attempt to echo the president's requirement for masks, for example, in federal buildings and such. And it's kind of the similar like restaurant issue and grocery store issue where you have a private business that has the ability to set policy. And there's always the balancing factor of the requirements of informed consent, of medical exemptions and personal exemptions, which, can come into play. They're probably going to introduce some version of a vaccine passport or a digital certificate as proof of vaccination. And probably going to roll out, as the Pfizer CEO just said a couple of days ago, of an annual COVID vaccine for everyone forever.
It's never going to happen. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
No.
Over my dead body.
Oh yeah,
I
I'm with you. I'm with you,
never.
and I would agree, with the caller that it's not worth it to take the risk. We have, reports of over 1,000 people being killed by the vaccine as of today.
And just to point out, that is government data. Okay, that is not
Right.
Dr. Gaeta or the health lawyer or
Right.
informed Washington. That is not what we're talking about. That is straight out of CDC.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and are people? I can share screen if people want to see that. Is that
Yeah,
is that
sure.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
do that. And can I add a thought real quick?
Yeah.
sure.
I think what a good way to define VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, is it is a government system. It is highly flawed. It's passive. Anybody can report into it. It cannot be used to determine causality or a frequency of an event. It can only be used to look for red flags, look for safety signals, because it's such a flawed system. That's about all you have going for you. And even as crippled as the system is, we're seeing massive red flags, massive safety signals by what's being reported, right? So when you just go look, and the CDC is dismissing as coincidence, all that. Yeah, you go ahead, Michael. I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just I need to allow screen sharing.
Yeah.
On the VAERS, there was a study out of Harvard that said only 1 out of every 100 adverse events are reported.
Yeah.
So it's actually using that 1,000, it would be 10,000. I'm sorry, Sally, what were you saying?
Here's the worst of it, though. The events right after getting vaccinated may not be all that high, but there is an issue of something called antibody dependent enhancement from this vaccine. This is not a vaccine. It's a totally different thing than vaccines that preceded it. And supposedly it's like 4 to 12 months later, if you are exposed to any sort of coronavirus, it just could be a cold that would give you little trouble ordinarily, your body will mount an extreme cytokine storm reaction, a way overboard immune reaction that will likely kill you, whereas the COVID probably wouldn't have.
Yeah, I'd like to add here that Sally is right about what the science is looking like, that it's all the evidence seems to point in that way. And there's a brand new study, and it is on informedchoice.org, added it to a post about pathogenic priming. Another word is immune enhancement. All of these terms sort of mean the same thing. But at the end of January, researchers looked very closely at the SARS-CoV-2 virus and the spike protein in particular. And they found exactly what people in our community have been saying and writing to the FDA for more than a year is you have got to filter out the parts, the proteins, the parts of the spike protein, the parts of the coronavirus that match human proteins, or you're going to be setting people up for all sorts of health problems. And the study was done and it's been published in a major journal. And there it shows there is this concern. And so it can happen with wild infection, with second, if you get exposed later on to wild infection, it's not with everybody, but it's a potential. But it can happen with anybody exposed to a vaccine that contains the spike protein. And every single vaccine that's been given emergency use authorization or is in the pipeline trying to get it uses the spike protein. So Sally is right that we've been really set up. And so far we're seeing grade 3 reactions and deaths in people who previously were exposed to COVID and then got vaccinated anyway. They're not pausing. They're not doing any caution. They're not doing any pre-screening. It's really alarming what's going on. The lack of safety science, the whitewashing of the stuff and doctors around the world and scientists around the world are speaking up, and they're seeing the corruption of our federal regulatory agencies because of it. Did we give Dr. Gaeta some screen share capability?
I did.
Okay.
You got it, right? Okay, so you're going to throw that out. Sally, I hope that you can get in touch with me. I know I have your email, but I would actually like to talk to you more about this, given your expertise. I think you're a pilot, if I'm not mistaken, and it would be very, very helpful. All right, Sally, good to hear from you. A lot of blessings your way. It's great to hear 13 years later, people are still happy with the work that we're doing at the firm. It's a lot harder nowadays. All right, we have another caller named Jim. And I normally don't get all these calls, but okay. Is that you, Jim?
Hello?
Hello, Jim?
Yes, hi. My question is, in your opinions, are there any states or municipalities or countries that seem to get the whole mask thing right, or
Yes.
close to right, or like who can we look to as an example of a place that respected our individual liberties and understood the science and kind of sort of did it right? That's my question.
Yeah, happy to. This was it's interesting. This was published recently, and I'll do a screen share for those who are able to see Zoom. Who are on Zoom or the stream through Facebook. This was a study just published in The Economist of how the differences are in Europe. And what we can say related to masks is a couple of things, that the increase in masks, wearing the mask does not correlate with a reduction in disease, actually quite the opposite. And let me show you, this is the Swiss Policy Research website, which summarizes a lot of the research that's been done on the mask. And very obvious, to summarize it briefly, we're from a public health perspective, we're using public health measures for the general public, people who are not sick or symptomatic, that previously were reserved for people who were sick. In other words, quarantining people who are actively ill is not new and has been done for millennia because it works. But quarantining, distancing, masking people who are not sick is absurd, and does not have a factual basis to it. And I'd refer you to the Swiss Policy Research website and a very good website called rationalground.com, rationalground.com, which I have up on the screen here. And here's a comparison of Israel, which initially got it right, where they resisted the lockdown and then they kind of jumped on the bandwagon. Sweden, by comparison, did not, and they did it right. We could also look at Nepal. Nepal has no quarantine, no lockdown, no masks. People are gathering, they're going to sporting events, they're going to music concerts. It's as if it was 2019 again, and they have no COVID. There's no COVID and everybody's gathering as usual, life as normal. So if you just look at this initial chart, this is from rationalground.com, mask charts page. Here's this orange bit on the bottom is Sweden. And here is Israel in the blue stripe. And the more severely they locked down and masked, curfews and all that, the worse things got. And Sweden, did not. Without any of these mandates. People have the choice if they want, but there's no mandates. Same thing in Florida. Florida is a great example. No masks, no lockdown for several months, and they have better statistics than the severely locked down California and New York. So it appears that the more severe the restrictions are, the worse it gets. And the less severe the restrictions are, the better it gets. So whether you look at the basic science or you look at the epidemiology or population studies, they all agree that the masks don't prevent anything. And you look at the evidence to support masks, and I just read 2 studies. The number of people in the study was 4 people in the study, and they're defending global health policy on studies with 4 people in it. It's absurd. And so clearly, if this was Miami-Dade County, the mask mandate didn't help at all. Here's Hawaii. We had Tom from Hawaii. Masks inside, no benefit, masks outside, and then there was a spike. There's no science, there's not even a single study to even evaluate whether wearing a mask outdoors has any benefit. It's complete fantasy land. There's no evidence to support this. Here's Hawaii, masks, and then the following thing. We look at differing counties in California. The mask mandate made, according to the correlation is, this is not causation, but correlation. The more counties mandated masks, things got worse after that, very clearly. And this just goes on and on and on. With looking at state after state, there's no benefit. Here's Peru. Here's the mask mandate spike in cases. And again, this is all based on very dodgy testing methodology, which is the PCR test, which is irrelevant to medical diagnosis, is not a valid test for anything. Here's France. More tight mask mandates, outdoor mask mandates, the cases just keep going up.
Mike, let me ask you though, Dr. Gaeta.
Yeah.
I mean, as just a person that's interested and
Yeah.
I'm not really bought and sold on any of this, but why does wearing the mask cause these increases?
Well, there are 2 main issues with the mask. And this is I just want to, before I answer that, this is a very large study called the Danish, sometimes nicknamed the Danish mask study, that just came out a couple of months ago, published in Annals of Internal Medicine. It took them months. This study was completed 6 months earlier. Nobody would publish it because it was so controversial. And what did they find? No statistical difference. And they looked at thousands of people in this study. And this is the DanMask 19 study, completed in April and May. The study was ready to go in June. Took them till November to find a publisher, but it was published in Annals of Internal Medicine. and looking at, over 6,000 people, and they found there is no differences, no statistically significant differences in the mask. And so to answer your question, Patricia, there are two main issues. One is hypoxia. So we have a decreased oxygen intake through the ever moistening mask. And we saw, tragic evidence of this in a major study done in Germany on 26,000 school children. And they found that 2/3 of the children had adverse reactions to wearing the mask. And I'll show you the original study. People can find it themselves, look it up themselves, read it themselves, think for themselves. And this was the COKI study, Corona Children Study, and first results of a Germany-wide registry on mouth and nose covering in children. And they looked at 26,000 kids, and 68%, more than 2/3, had adverse events. Almost all of them can be easily attributed to hypoxia or decreased oxygen. Irritability, headache, difficulty concentrating, impaired learning, drowsiness, fatigue. These are classic signs of reduced oxygen. So that's issue one, is less good things coming in. And issue two is autoinfection, less bad things going out. So breathing is is that old saying, in with the good air, out with the bad air. Well, that's what's supposed to happen. You need to exhale what needs to be eliminated, toxins, infections, and such, carbon dioxide, and you need to inhale the good stuff, which is oxygen, which makes up about 14% of the air. And so when you wear a mask, you're impairing the expulsion of waste and the intake of oxygen. And there is no evidence that masking a healthy population has any benefit at all. And because of these two mechanisms, there's significant risk. There was a major study done on 6,000 people in a hospital system in Vietnam in 2015. And this is a big study, randomized controlled study, and they found a 13-fold increase in infection in people who wore the mask compared to folks who didn't wear a mask. So the risk of infection is greatly increased. And so again, these interventions on sick people might be defensible, but are completely indefensible and not based on science. This is not science or data or evidence supporting masking of everybody and distancing and quarantine and lockdown of healthy asymptomatic people. There is no asymptomatic spread. Asymptomatic people do not spread disease. This has been confirmed by World Health Organization. There's a huge study with 10 million people confirming there's no asymptomatic spread. It's droplet spread, it's not contact, it's not airborne. You have to get coughed or sneezed on. And even then, the risk is not that great. It's very difficult to transmit sort of pathogen. And so, the public health measures have done much more harm than good. The cure, so to speak, has been far worse than the disease. And at this point, it's not last March. It's not, a year ago, things were much more serious, perhaps. But now the public health policy has not matched the decline in incidence and mortality. And so people just need to take a stand and demand that everything be reopened and life back to normal, because that's the only thing that the science suggests, is that all of these measures do far more harm than good.
I think we
that
need to
was brilliant.
brilliant.
Yeah, it was like an amazing analysis. Go on, Bernadette.
Well, I was just going to say, we need to start with the children. I mean, if it's one
Totally.
thing to keep that thing on your face, but
Yeah.
children who are not at risk of severe disease or death,
No,
who
they're
are
not.
not proven not to be transmitters,
Nope.
they are requiring them in Washington State, our governor, children playing soccer are required to wear masks. Children running cross country are required to wear masks. There was a report of 5 children running cross country who passed out.
Yep.
It is insanity to put a mask on anybody who is doing physical exertion. I mean, it's insanity at any time, based on all the science that you just talked about and that is well known. And I feel like someday they're going to look back on this. It's absolutely criminal. It's criminal, the harm that is being done, the health harm, and especially to the children. That is what fires me up the most.
Me too. The children
Yeah.
is, I mean, my
It's
whole
evil.
practice has been protecting children's health. And, that's how I amassed such a large following here in New York. Parents would be calling me, my kid was totally fine. And now, got 100 vaccines and can't walk or can't speak. Now we're masking them and distancing them, and the psychological impact. I will tell you though that we are definitely getting ready to bring a lawsuit, and Dr. Gaeta, I will be definitely relying on that data, and the way you explained it was very, very helpful. I really appreciate that. I know we were going to talk about informed consent today, so I'm going to have to bring you all back on to do that. And Bernadetta, as always, you're always helpful in explaining and dumbing this stuff down for the rest of us. So
well, I hope not dumbing it down, but maybe make it a little more understandable. I'm that middle person, but I want to just throw in there real quick. I'm going to put Dr. Gaeta on the spot. A lot of stuff still to talk about. You want to come on my show Friday? Are you free?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, I'll email you. Let's pick up this conversation on Friday.
I might be teaching a webinar, but yeah,
okay.
I would love to. Let's confirm.
We'll definitely reschedule and get you back on. Anyway, we're getting near the top of the show, and I just would like to tell anybody out there, if you are interested in the work that we are all doing, money has remained a huge problem in funding these cases. As you'll recall, our first caller, Tom, and I explained to him that, some of the problems with fighting these things is the money involved. So you can certainly make a donation to the work that I'm doing at patriciafinnattorney.com. You can click there, and there's all kinds of links. And Bernadette, and why don't you tell us about where people can reach you, and then Mike will wrap up with you, and where people can get in touch with you and your organization.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Patty. And thank you for all you do. And I do encourage people to donate to you. You can find me, find excellent articles and information at informedchoicewa.org. And we have our own radio show on Informed Life Radio every Friday, 11:50 a.m. KKNW. You can find link to the radio show at informedchoicewa.org. So just everybody stay informed, educate yourself. Freedom requires an educated population. And that, so when they're trying to censor information, you got to know there's a reason they don't want you to have it. So go find out why.
Yes. And Dr. Gaeta.
Yeah, thank you. And just so folks know, if you're interested in more on this subject, I teach a free weekly webinar on natural immune support and my perspectives on the COVID fiasco at michaelgaeta.com. And you'll find my clinical practice there for folks who are interested in Chinese and functional medicine consultation via phone or video. My clinic is here in Boulder, Colorado. I've been practicing for over 30 years. And work with folks with a lot of issues who would like a natural approach to improve their health and support their healing. So you can find that at michaelgaeta.com. Those who are interested in autoimmune disease, which is one of my specialties, you'll also find information about our current autoimmune mastery program course, which is an online course which is going on right now for the health conscious public as well as practitioners. And also at michaelgaeta.com, you'll find my free online course, Vaccines and Choice, which is many of my teachings and also our friend James Lyons Weiler on the subject of vaccines and informed consent, which is something that's very near and dear to me. But I would just simply say these are the days for courage. It's important to be informed, but then to do something with that information. And so I think this is the time for doing unpopular things in the interest of truth and freedom.
Bravo. I mean, I got to tell you, this was one of the better shows. I mean, they've all been remarkable. But it went so fast, and it seemed like it was a lot of rapid fire. And I did enjoy the callers. Thank you for calling in. We had kind of restricted that a little bit because of the censorship that was going on. So that all worked out really well. Anyway, I'd like to again thank my guests and the callers, and to remind you that we are here every Monday for the Live at 5 Drive. We're competing with Fox. You know, they're live at 5 and I get better ratings. Did you guys know that?
No,
Awesome.
I did it. I did. More people want to see me than Geraldo Rivera. So I really love that. But anyway, thank you again. And you're listening to WRCR Radio, 1700 AM, the Good Health Lawyer Radio Hour. And we'll be back next week at the same time, same bat channel. Peace out. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Georgia didn't feel just right.